Welcome to Spirits Podcast, episode 35, Wonder Woman and the Amazons with Greg Rucka.
Guys, I've been planning this. I've been planning this for so long, since last October, and I'm so glad you are finally going to listen to this thing.
So Greg Rucka is the writer of Wonder Woman.
Yes.
He writes Wonder Woman for DC.
He writes the Rebirth series of Wonder Woman.
And we are so freaking pumped to have him on the show talking about the mythology of comic books, the mythology of Wonder Woman, about the Amazons, about as a writer, how he adapts actual mythology to writing in this world.
And his own experience growing up loving mythology.
Yeah, and also the hella queer nature of Wonder Woman, which you know that I am here for.
Yeah, Amanda's totally here for that.
This is a perfect present Julia's given me.
So we're going to start out this episode with some background information on the Amazons and mythology, as well as the origins of Wonder Woman and kind of where Greg came into the comic series. And then you'll be able to listen to this incredible interview with Greg.
Yeah, we talk about fuckboys in Greek mythology, Wonder Woman's queerness, like I said, and what is next for the DC universe, what he's kind of doing to the actual mythology.
What grounds he's trying to lay for the mythology.
I know, and what a cool career and industry too, to just constantly leave little threads for future people to pick up on.
I love it. It's great.
It's so much fun.
So we love this episode, and if you do too, it would be amazing if you could share it on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you find cool stuff.
And speaking of heroes, like that segue, Jules?
Yeah.
Welcome to the newest members of our Patreon family. Taylor, Judy, and Emily, welcome aboard.
And thanks to Jess, Derek, Paige, Deborah, and Darvla, who upgraded their pledges.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for upgrading. We are really, really excited to be doing live streams now with our $10 and $15 patrons. So if you want to hang with us and have us answer your questions and talk about whatever topics you want, read poems, whatever, you can definitely hit us up on Patreon. But thank you, 4 million jillion thank yous, to our supporting producer level patrons: Leanne, Shannon, Phil, Catherine, Christina, MCF, Megan, Sarah, Katie, Derek, and Deborah.
You powerful warrior children of Zeus.
Love it. 2 more bits of housekeeping, y'all. First, we are working on merch.
Oh my God, merch.
Oh my God, merch. If you or someone you know is a super talented designer, please get in touch with us. We're looking to commission a couple different shirts and tote bags, maybe kind of creepy, kind of cool. We'll see where it
pins
goes.
And stuff.
In addition to the logoed t-shirts and things. So we are spiritspodcast@gmail.com or @spiritspodcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc.
And this week's recommendations, we actually both have the same one for you.
We do.
Amanda is starting a new podcast.
Yay!
Not that she's leaving Spirits or anything.
No.
Never. Unacceptable.
Never. I'm polyamorous with these podcasts.
Thank you.
But I am starting a new show, and it is called Join the Party. It's a collaborative storytelling and role-playing podcast where I sit down with 3 friends to create a story together, chapter by chapter, which we tell live to you on air.
There may be dungeons, possibly dragons.
We are starting out with a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, but wait, don't be scared. We are designing this podcast specifically to be fun and interesting and educational for people who have never done any kind of role-playing game before, which I haven't, while still being true to the game that experienced players know and love.
I know, we just started doing Dungeons & Dragons this year, and we love it so much.
We love it so much, and never had anyone teach it to us when we were younger, so being able to hopefully bring new people into this world. If you listen to Spirits, you're going to love this podcast. Join us. You're really, really going to like it.
I had a lot of fun kind of acting as a creative consultant with our dear friend Eric Silver, who let me basically ruin his religion.
Yeah, set up the mythology and the religion of this world.
If you want to hear more from Eric, he is in episode 8 of Spirits, The Golem, and he is an amazing storyteller and a lot of fun and just an all-around cool person.
Yeah, we are creating this incredibly fun world that we get to just play in and make stories about. And if you've never, like I said, done any kind of gaming like this or listen to any kind of D&D podcasts, that's totally cool. We're going to be releasing some special episodes just for beginners. Episodes 1 and 2 are going to have a tool tips kind of voiceover where I'll pause the game every few minutes and tell you what actually happened, what a roll is, what a critical hit is, what a check is, stuff that, again.
Did one of you get a critical hit in your first episode?
We did. We got 3.
Damn,
girl.
That's a good dice.
The fates are with us.
So Amanda, where can people find Join the Party?
Thank you very much for reinforcing my brand here, Julia.
You're welcome.
So you can subscribe to Join the Party in any podcast app. Follow us on @JoinThePartyPod on any social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you can read more about our characters, about the people I'm doing the show with, and sign up for our email list at jointhepartypod.com. All these links are below.
Amanda's playing an elvish rogue, and it's funny as hell.
Yeah, I'm a cool, flippy assassin teen It's very exciting.
You're a teen?
Oh, no, I'm a teenager.
Oh.
I get to like relive my teenage angst glory days. It's super fun.
You were no rogue as a teen.
No, I was not. I'm getting to live out that alternate reality, that flashpoint. So I'm very excited about it. Listen to the episode. It's a joke. So that's about it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
So y'all enjoy Spirits Podcast episode 35, Wonder Woman and the Amazons with Greg Rucka.
Greg Rucka!
Greg Rucka!
Amanda, we're talking about Wonder Woman today, and I wanted to give our listeners a little bit of feedback, a little bit of information about Wonder Woman and the Amazons.
Yeah, I don't actually know much about her. All I know is the kind of outfit, the lasso. Was there an invisible plane?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
It's the invisible jet. Good job.
Making sure.
I'm very proud of you.
Nice. Making sure I didn't make that up from my girl Ab Horson. Gotta make a Garth Thinks reference in every episode. Just moving past it. But yeah, so tell me. I know, are the Amazons real? Like, is that a dumb question?
We'll talk about it a little bit. So in Greek mythology, the Amazons are a race of warrior women. They're usually located, according to different sources, either in the Ukraine or Iran. The name Amazons...
Historically?
Yes. Based on Greek historians, they place them in these areas.
I see.
So the name Amazon is thought to come from two different roots. One is the Old Persian word Hamazan or Hamazana, which is warriors or to make war.
Makes sense. And these were like fierce ladies with like battle axes and like riding in on horses and stuff, right?
Hell yeah. So the Greek derivative is thought to mean manless or without husbands, but that's been disproven.
Oh, good. I was making a bit of an eye at the iPad here.
I know you are. In the Iliad, they are known as the Antanarii, or those who fight like men.
Okay.
Which I'm kind of into that.
All right.
So
a little bit like, play like a girl, play like a boy.
Yeah.
But, whatever.
That's okay.
As long as you're defined by your badassery, I'm cool with that.
It's pretty, for the Greeks, that's pretty good. We've talked about the Greeks are not good at this.
They're not.
So according to some myths, no men were permitted to have sexual encounters or even reside in Amazon country. In order to maintain their population, once a year, the Amazons would visit the Garagarians, which were a neighboring tribe. The male children who were born from this visit were either killed, sent back to their fathers, or exposed to the wilderness to fend for themselves.
Okay.
Girls were kept and raised by the Amazon mothers, who taught them agriculture, hunting, and the art of war.
I'm not like pro killing babies for the record, but
I know.
It's nice to hear the opposite of that instead
Yes.
of like the girl child being like left to, in a river or some sad
Our standards are low right now.
Standards are super low.
So other stories say that men who survived battles with the Amazons were taken as slaves and used to keep the population stable.
Also not a fan of that, but again, it's sort of interesting to see the normal kind of gendered version of that tale inverted. It's almost like the most extreme like boys camp, girls camp across the lake situation that you've ever seen.
It's basically the episode of Parks and Rec with the Swanson Boy Scouts and the Pawnee goddesses.
Yes.
Basically. So one of the main stories that heavily features the Amazons is the labors of Hercules.
Okay.
Do you know anything about the labors of Hercules?
Nothing.
Okay, so basically Hercules fucks up, he kills his wife and children, and has to make it up to the gods by going through these trials.
Okay.
So one of these trials is he's tasked with obtaining the girdle of Hippolyta, who is the queen of the Amazons.
Lol, good luck.
And that was given to her by her father, Ares, the god of war. So Hercules takes a bunch of friends with him. He sails off to Themyscira, which is the land of the Amazons.
Nice.
Hippolyta is actually super into Hercules. He's a kind of impressive dude, and he's a warrior, and she actually agrees to give him the belt. But Hera, being Hera and wants him to fail, disguises herself and tells the Amazons that Hercules is planning on stealing their queen.
Ooh.
So the Amazon warriors pursue Hercules on horseback. Hercules thinks Hippolyta double-crosses him, then kills Hippolyta, takes the belt, flees the land. Because he's a dick.
That's a pretty shitty, women hating women and jealousy-based tale.
Well, that's what Hera's all about, though.
Yeah.
Hera's all about Zeus is having sex with this woman, so I must turn her into a cow.
She's like the most covetous.
Yeah.
For sure.
Jealousy is her defining trait.
Okay, all right.
I know, it's not great. It's not great.
I'll let it slide. We're going to get to Wonder Woman soon.
Let's talk about the historical ideas of the Amazons really quick.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Herodotus a little bit during the interview with Greg, so I just want to give a little context for that. So the Herodotus historical reflections on the Amazons said that they observed ancient maternal customs, hunting on horseback with their husbands, going to war, wearing the same dress as men, etc. So the women were said that they could not marry until they killed a man in battle.
Whoa.
Which I'm all about. Hippocrates, who is a different dude from Herodotus.
Yeah, so Herodotus basically like wrote a bunch of histories about, you know, at his moment, like the history before that.
Most of them weren't true.
Most of them were not true because he was sort of like, these are some stories I've heard and now they're history.
It's basically, what's the dude? Marco Polo. Marco Polo just heard a bunch of stories and then came back to Europe and was like, here's what it's like in
stories.
Asia.
Yeah, but instead of us knowing what actually was happening in those lands, because Marco, you know, wasn't so long ago, this is like one of the only historical things we have from Herodotus. So it's sort of like your senile grandfather telling you a bunch of stories, and like some of them maybe have some truth, and so you're like, okay, Grandpa, like please keep talking to me.
Say so.
Yeah.
Then there's Hippocrates, and he claimed that they had no right breasts. That when they were babies, the mothers would cauterize the skin so the growth would be arrested.
So that they could like have a sword belt or an
for
archery?
archery.
Yeah. I mean, it's so specific that makes me think there might have been some truth to that.
Maybe, but also there's been plenty of studies proven that the breast doesn't impede on pulling back a bow.
Oh, I'm sure, but just as like a kind of ritualistic and like traditional thing.
Right, and apparently the muscle that would have gone to the breast actually goes to the arm and shoulder instead.
I assume just so that it's not lumpy, not because it's not muscled.
I know.
I don't know.
It seems silly to me.
Who knows? But badass is the point, and committed.
Right, a little bit more about them. The Amazon River is named by Francisco de Orellana after the tribe of warlike women.
Nice.
Which he supposedly encountered on the Amazon River and was like, these are the Amazons. It wasn't. According to medieval historians, the Amazons created the battle axe.
Whoa.
Which I think is kind of cool.
The battle axe is so efficient, it must have been created by women.
Yeah, of course. In modern times, there's a group in the Ukraine known as Asgarda who claim to be the new tribe of Amazons and claim that the Amazons are their direct descendants, which makes sense because we just said they were either from Ukraine or Iran.
Yeah.
And so they teach the group a martial art that is based off of a technique called combat hopak. And the group is like 150 women.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty cool.
They even have an Amazon village museum that's set up in their village.
Next time we're in Ukraine,
that's
let's
where
go.
we're going. And all that is background to Wonder Woman. And I kind of want to give background on what Greg Rucka specifically has been doing with Wonder Woman. And it has a little bit of comic book history, so bear with me for a little bit.
You mean lean in closer, because this is fascinating.
So DC is doing a series right now called Rebirth. And basically what it is merging two timelines that previously existed in the DC universe that were separated by the Flashpoint story in 2011.
Okay.
Basically, Barry Allen, aka The Flash, wakes up in a different timeline and has to go back in time and try and change things back to the way they were. In doing so, he severely alters the timeline, creating what is known as the New 52.
So it's sort of like an alternate reality within the DC universe,
yes,
where different things happen to different characters.
Right. So in Rebirth, the timelines from pre-Flashpoint and the New 52 are merged together, creating a dual reality that is existing concurrently.
Does Wonder Woman from those two timelines meet herself? Like, how does that work?
No, it's just the two realities have merged together.
So, like, stuff from each of them is true?
Yes. So basically, what is happening right now is Wonder Woman series is going into her origin story, which is being told every other comic, called the Year One series. Which basically tells her new origin based on the rebirth timeline.
Got it. So like best of both and sort of retelling her from the beginning.
Right, exactly. So now anyone who knows anything about Wonder Woman does know that she is the princess of the Amazons.
Nice.
They are a woman tribe, so obviously you would think that like romantic and sexual relationships are established in that sort of world, but DC has not been super explicit about it until Greg Rucka came in and basically said, Wonder Woman is queer. Yay! Everyone knows that. And so we were really excited to have him on. But let's talk a little bit about the history of Wonder Woman, not Greg Rucka Wonder Woman, but just how she was created. So she was created in the 1940s. Her creator was actually a dude named William Moulton Marston. And it was co-created with his wife, Elizabeth Holloway Marston.
Oh, nice.
Who were polyamorous.
What?
And Wonder Woman was actually inspired by their live-in girlfriend named Olive.
What?
Yep.
That's so good! In the 40s?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
They were also super into BDSM, which is why you get a lot of bondage instances with Wonder Woman, including the lasso, and etc. Also, he invented the lie detector, which is why she has a lasso of truth. Yep.
What? So many things here.
So many things.
If one of them was true, I would have been amazed. Whoa.
Yeah.
In the 40s.
Yeah, in the 40s.
I'm guilty of thinking about all people in the past as just like figures who like, were born, married, had kids and died. But
Sure.
But they got up to some shit and
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Okay, so what we need to know about Wonder Woman is her origin really starts, in the 1940s at least, with her discovering a World War II soldier who washed up on the island of Themyscira.
Oh, like in their like paradise bubble.
Yes, and the Amazons live in isolation from the world in the DC comics.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a paradise island.
Yeah.
And so Diana, that's her real name, her name was not Wonder Woman.
I guess I never thought about that. Diana, okay.
She is the daughter of Zeus and the Amazons' queen, Hippolyta, which we talked about a little bit.
What parentage?
Also, if you recognize the name Hippolyta, it's because Shakespeare. Yeah, I was gonna be like Shakespeare used it, but you beat me to it.
We have done and seen Midsummer way too many times.
We have. So this makes her a demigoddess, which is super cool. Because she is Zeus's child.
Yeah, and so does she have like powers over regular Amazons?
She has normal Amazon powers, and then she's gifted with powers from the gods, including flight and super strength, etc.
Cool.
Which she actually, in the Rebirth series, gets after she leaves Themyscira.
Oh, wow.
So the assumption is this character who lived on an island full of women was just waiting for a dude to wash up on the shores, which is incredibly stupid. Basically, Diana really leaves the island because she is given this diplomatic mission, and this is such an honor to her as a warrior that she's able to go into the world of men and fight alongside these people.
For sure.
And this is World War II, so obviously we're very focused on battle during this period.
Yeah, and like the world needs some intervention, you know, so it makes total sense for like the princess, right? For like the daughter of the queen and of Zeus to, kind of be their emissary out into the world to, share the light and fight for justice and all of that. And based on what we discussed with Greg, it seems like people think that she just like saw the first man that washed up and was like, F this, I'm out of here. Goodbye, Amazons. Out into the terrible fractured chemical warfare world of men. Like, that's not the thing.
No, she had a duty she had to do.
Yeah.
She wasn't leaving for dick, as Greg will tell us later.
Listen, guys, we don't drop so much profanity, but in this case, like this joke is worth it. Just wait for it.
Exactly. So that is where we leave Wonder Woman right now in the Rebirth series.
Nice.
She does a little bit of fighting gods and stuff. She fights Ares, I think, in the series pretty early on.
Cool.
And I just love it. But Greg Rucka will talk to us a little bit more about the more nuanced areas of Wonder Woman, and we're excited to bring you that interview. So we're joined today by personally one of my favorite comic book writers of all time, Greg Rucka, who is currently writing the Rebirth Wonder Woman series, which is excellent. You've heard me praise it on the podcast before. So Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm very happy to be here.
We met last year at Comic-Con, and it's great that we finally got to sit down and have a conversation about Wonder Woman and the Amazons. It's going to be great. Okay, so I guess how I kind of want to start this off is I want to know how you got into the Wonder Woman lore, how you got into Greek mythology in general.
I suspect, I had read some mythology growing up. I know for a fact that when I was starting high school, I went to a private Episcopal college prep, and the reading list when I entered in 8th grade, you had a summer reading list, and one of the things on that list I remember was Edith.
That was actually my first mythology book too.
Yeah, though I know I had encountered the myths probably in far more watered down forms prior to that, and then I'm a role playing gamer. I'm a tabletop gamer, so you don't play D&D and not in some way connect with Greek mythology. I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody's done that dissertation, but I'm pretty certain the one leads to the other.
Oh yeah, we actually just started our own D&D campaign like a couple of months ago. So
and the more we learn, the more we dig into mythology on spirits, the more I realize that like human beings are telling so many similar stories over and over, and there are so many roots in Greek mythology for the stories that we know and love today.
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose you could argue that the root of those Greek myths run even further back, that we have lost with the oral tradition where those stories were born. comics are modern myth. That's, the English lit guy in me looks at them and goes, yes, this is what we are, participating in. This is our modern extension of this continuity, of this continuum, of this kind of storytelling. It's clear when you look back at a lot of the ancient Greek texts that there is an element of social propaganda at work. That's, it's clear that there is at a certain point and in certain stories a morality that they are attempting to promote.
Mm-hmm. There's definite right conduct and consequences for erring from that path.
Exactly, for society. Don't have sex with your parents, for instance.
Always a good choice.
And I don't, it's harder, I think, today, in 2017, to look and say, well, what does the myth need to be about? Are we drilling down on something specifically societal when, in point of fact, we're always talking about the same things? Mm-hmm. And in many ways, we just end up finding a new way to say it, or trying to. But one can argue that there's the great, I think it's Fitzgerald. There's a Fitzgerald quote that goes, there are only two stories, Jack and the Beanstalk and Cinderella.
Yeah.
And that's it. Everything, it's just a question of how you tell it and how you dress it up. Mm-hmm. So.
Was there a myth that you really found yourself, resonating with you early on when you were first discovering these?
It's funny because now that I'm thinking about it, I remember seeing the original Clash of the Titans in the movie.
The classic one with the mechanical owl, of course.
Yes. I was always, there are certain myths that I've always gravitated towards. I just find more and more fascinating, and the older I get, and sort of as you get to the mature reader's version of them, they become even more interesting, I think. I've always thought that Perseus's story was, I've always enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I've always had incredible sympathy for Medusa.
You have to. She has such a sad story, and then her story ends with a dude coming into her house and chopping her head off.
I mean, just talk about, she is the object lesson for the last thing you want is a god's attention.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, it just never ends well. She did nothing wrong.
Yep.
And in point of fact, did everything right, and it was like, you really can't.
She was targeted in a temple. Like, she was there. She was trying to do it right.
There's nothing she could do.
And she's faithful. She's there. It's not as if she was just, it's the equivalent of going in and seducing a nun.
It truly is. It truly is.
But, okay, well, here's poor Medusa, who by every definition of good person is. And then it goes downhill so badly. So I've always had incredible sympathy for her. Icarus.
Always a good one.
I've always, and I have a memory of encountering Icarus fairly early. Maybe because the hubris lesson is an important one to give to precocious young children.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
I can see that. I never went in for Hercules. Hercules never did it for me.
Well, he did, murder his wife and children in a mad rage, so maybe not the best role model.
He kind of shut me out right at the start there. I found him hard to empathize with.
You know what's a much cooler myth? The Amazons.
Way, way better.
Well, again, depends on where you're standing.
From the lady side.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly.
from the Athenian male side, it kept you up all night.
That's true.
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
We're okay with that.
Well, it was good on the scary bits. The problem was that when they stayed up and then they completely sexualized it, it was something else.
Yeah, that's the problem that we kind of come into, isn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, there's a line in Wonder Woman 8 where Barbara Minerva's arguing with a colleague about the Amazons, and I believe it's her colleague who says they're a vampire myth. They're this sexy taboo, and there's a great amount of truth in that. I mean, Herodotus didn't know what the hell he was talking about.
Herodotus never knew what he was talking about.
It was half fever dream, yeah.
And I love that people turn and they go, well, he's the authority. And it's like, but that's literally like saying Ted down on the corner who's shouting at you about the efficacy of his tinfoil hat is the authority on radio transmissions. The two do not necessarily go together. So
That's true.
It is so fascinating, though, what parts of those stories and what interpretations of those stories we have chosen to keep so central to humanity. Every time that we go into a new myth and Julia mentions a detail that's really obscure, I sort of try to look at it from a anthropological perspective of why has this reading or have these certain details survived so long?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it goes back to the core, sort of what I was saying, at the top, which is, these are stories that speak to a relevance of the human condition and of us in society. So why do we keep coming back to these things, and why these particular points sort of ring up? It's funny, because when you were sort of baiting the hook and saying what are your favorite myths and so on, I don't tend to think of the Amazons at this point as a myth. This is related to several things, really. Because the first time I wrote Diana, which was 15 years ago, I really wanted to turn into that the DCU Amazons of Themyscira were derived from Herodotus's Amazons.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to grant them that sort of martial history, I think. And at the time, and I remember arguing with Phil Jimenez at the time, who's also not just drawn but written Wonder Woman and has devoted many, many hours of his life to thinking about these things as well. He was very quick to point out they're not supposed to be Herodotus's Amazons.
Right. Now, Herodotus's Amazons, just to give some context to our listeners, that's much more of a balanced society instead of just the matriarchal. I think Herodotus was the one that was the Amazon woman couldn't marry until they had murdered a man in battle or something like that.
Herodotus's Amazons are walking vagina dentata. That's it. I mean,
yeah, pretty much.
There's no other way to think of them. And I didn't want, and I hasten to say, you're talking to a guy who's, like I say, 15 years on. That's how I'm looking at them now. At the time, there were things there that I really wanted to grab onto the historical moment. And Phil, argued they're not supposed to be. And it really wasn't until, coming in for this run that I really understood what he was trying to tell me. Because what he was trying to say, I think, and that I didn't hear because I was young and stupid and full of myself, was that Diana has to come from paradise.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It is fundamental to the character. The root of that myth, it has to be her growing up in paradise and then leaving. The historical record, in so much as we have one, and the mythological record, in so much as, thank you, Herodotus.
Someone has to buy that guy a beer. Thank you for all you've done.
I mean, they refute that. So it was important to me for this run to sort of set at what point can I have my cake and eat it too? Mm-hmm. Basically, can I have a Themyscira that is paradise, and can I also find a way to add that verisimilitude of these nomadic, rampaging horsewomen, who came, potentially out of as far east as Mongolia and down through the Caucasus, and were perfectly happy to live the lifestyle they live, and that myth is the myth that then the Greeks go, oh my God, women! Or actually it's, oh my God, women with swords and they know how to use them!
Shocker of the century.
Again, half fever dream, half just your id shrivels up and you're super scared,
It is. I don't know how blue we can be, on this, on our podcast here.
No, go ahead.
We're explicitly a drinking podcast, so,
well,
conversation
you want here.
Yes.
It's pure, it's softcore porn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. It's the equivalent of turning on Cinemax, 10 years ago and watching, any of these movies where people are having sex, but you don't actually see much more than tops. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's what a lot of this reads like now. It reads like, here are these women, and they're scary, and they're powerful, and they will take you, and they will make you have sex with them. So you can have it guiltlessly. It'll be great.
Right. Sorry, honey. I was at sword point. Like,
exactly. I mean, what was I supposed to do? There were 8 of them.
She said she needed children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Truly.
So trying to find in the current run, not that, but trying to find in the current run a way to let Themyscira be what it needs to be for Diana's purposes, to serve that myth.
Yeah.
And at the same time, try to set up in the DC mythology, there are a group of Amazons who split off, and they're referred to as the Banamidal. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wanted to sort of set the stage and say, so maybe we get these myths, these Herodotus-based myths off of the Bana,
the splinter group,
post schism. So one of the things actually, and I was setting this up in 8, and hopefully one day I'll have the opportunity to come back on the book and chase it down, is that Barbara Ann thinks she's on the way. She's trying to find Themyscira, but actually what happens is she's going the wrong direction.
Uh-oh.
She's following the Exodus. So, she's following the group that left and then sort of created their own diaspora. And it's not until she reaches a certain point where, again, playing with mythology, Athena basically, manifests and says, no, you turns her around. Basically,
Athena usually has to step in. We usually need a competent woman to step in.
and Athena's always my favorite. Athena,
yes, of course.
I mean, everybody loves Athena, and there's a reason for that. She's badass. And she comes with an owl. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the best animal to have associated with you two. Owls are the best.
They really are.
It grants her an immediate gravitas.
It does.
If the wisest of the mythical animals is her familiar.
I have a question for you, which I'm sure you probably get asked a lot. And this is actually I kind of fell off the DC wagon for a while before I got back into the Rebirth series. I know, I'm sorry. But honestly, this interview that you did at the beginning of the series where you came out and said, oh, Diana, definitely queer. That's what made me pick up the book again. In your historical understanding of the Amazons, why do you think queerness plays an important role, both in the historical context and in the modern day context?
I will tell you my thinking with regards to Diana.
Okay.
And it was very deliberate. And it goes pretty much as follows. And there are sort of 2 parallel lines here. The first is that if it had been possible at the time when her creators first wrote her 75 years ago, there's no question she would have been queer.
Yeah.
There's just
no
question.
A polyamorous, kink-friendly couple. Yeah, for sure.
There's just no doubt. So, number one, it's rooted in the DNA. Mm-hmm. All right? The society wasn't ready for it, but clearly her creators were. So that's on one. On the other is, and I don't know how much calculation this sounds like, it goes back to the issue of Themyscira being paradise. Mm-hmm. And I cannot imagine a paradise that does not allow for a full and loving relationship between consenting people.
I love that. Thank you. That's great.
and that further needs to be, it can be platonic, if platonic is what you want. It can be romantic, if romantic is what you need. And it can be sexual. And it can be any combination of these things. But there was something that Nicola Scott, who drew Year One, and Liam Sharp, who has been the stalwart artist on both The Truth and the Lies throughout. And I did a signing in a comic book store in Berkeley a little under a year ago. And one of the things that was said at that signing, we were having a discussion, was that no Amazon looks at another Amazon and says they are Amazoning wrong.
That's fair.
Wow.
I love that.
And that's sort of the root of that paradise, right? So if that's the truth of it, then there are plenty of, there are roughly in the mythology of the DC, 3,000 to 5,000 Amazons living on Themyscira. Mm-hmm. And they've been there for thousands of years. And if they've been there for thousands of years, it is quite possible that some of them have never actually cared to be romantically involved with anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite possible that several of them have been romantically involved with each other multiple times. Mm-hmm. And it's quite possible that there are viable polyamorous groups there, and there are monogamous couples there, and all of it has to work. The society has to be able to negotiate that. Mm-hmm. And it has to be able to negotiate it in a positive way. So Diana has to come out of that. If that's the paradise, then that's an element, right? That's her world. So that's one element. There's another element, and this is when I talk about calculation, this comes up. There cannot be, when you talk about Diana's origin in 2017, you have to be deliberately misreading her story if you want to argue that she leaves Themyscira because of Steve's arrival.
Right, that's just a load of nonsense.
Yeah. Doesn't leave because she's found Dick.
Correlation does not equal causation vis-a-vis Dick Ex Machina.
Yeah. Dick Ex Machina.
I'm gonna be crude about it, but at the end of the day, no magic penis is what makes her go, oh, I want to see the great big world.
No.
She wants to see the great big world. Steve opens the door. Her relationship with Steve needs to be sincere. Their love for each other has to be believable, but it is not the reason she leaves.
Right.
And that means, to me, that she has to have had, for her to be who she's supposed to be, she has to have been able to love and be loved.
Yeah.
Right.
And there was a whole thing about, whether or not she's a virgin and so on, like 15, 20 years ago. There's a whole tempest in a teacup about that, and it's absurd. Get rid of it. Nobody looks at Superman and goes, when was the first time he had sex?
Yeah,
exactly.
Such a double standard.
It is. It's a gross double standard. And I really wanted to just get it all away. Just get rid of all of it. Mm-hmm. And the idea then that here's Wonder Woman, who's, arguably her greatest superpower is love. One could argue it's compassion or, fealty to the truth or any. But one of the things in her portfolio, for instance, is love. She loves. She has compassion. And she has empathy. And to imply that, therefore, she has never, she was wrapped in cotton wool,
right?
Bottled. She never looked at anybody with desire. She was never looked upon with desire, and that, didn't respond to it. One of the problems you run into with Wonder Woman, and I did an interview this morning, and it came up, and you hear it over and over again. And I have a colleague of mine who wrote a story recently. And their argument for the story was like, well, she's too perfect. And I hate that.
That's so dumb.
I hate that. I hate the idea that her grace and her wisdom somehow makes her boring.
Yeah.
When in point of fact, what makes her heroic is her ability to be graceful and wise while being human.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that means we have to grant to her, and this will circle back to the Hercules thing, because as much as I don't like Hercules, I see that one of the things that's going on in the myth is he's incredibly flawed.
Right.
He is a flawed person, but he rises, right? Hercules' story is not Arachne's story. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which is, Hercules didn't get up one day and the god said, hey, we're going to make trouble for you. Hercules kind of comes out of the gate going, I'm here to make trouble.
He comes in swinging.
Yeah, and poor Arachne just gets up one day and she's pretty. You know what I mean? And Cupid goes because mom says I can't have that competition. And Cupid then goes, oh my God. Well, I guess Eros, I should say.
Yes.
Because I think I'm in love. And then tries to have this thing, tries to protect her. Tries to create a situation where what happens to mortals who are noticed by gods does not happen to her, and it backfires horribly.
It never works out.
Exactly, but the Diana's heroism, you have to believe in her. And that means we have to have those points of connection and contact. We have to understand, that she has loved and she loves.
And I think portfolio is such a great word to use as well, because whenever, we see in stories the like one great love that changes it all, that is compelling in a certain way, especially if you've experienced something like that. But, without context, I think it's so much harder. Like if you have a whole context of like relationships that matter to you with lots of different people in lots of different ways, platonic, romantic, sexual, combinations of various ones, short affairs and long-standing friendships or relationships. Like that to me is what really is significant and compelling and like interesting and gives context to new relationships that we see characters experience. So the sort of one, like she had nothing and then Steve, that's, I guess, like, I don't know, two-dimensionally compelling. But I think, again, being able to like get different things from different people at different times, to revisit them, for them to change over, that's just so much more interesting.
There is a different story to be told about a person who is raised in isolation and meets another person from outside. And they fall in love and now we have to, and then you can go for miles from there, because that literature is full of that. I stay with you and we live together here. You and I must escape your gilded prison. I mean, there's any number of ways to chase that. But with Diana and what Diana goes on to do in the larger DC universe, it undermines the character fatally if her reason for leaving home is because she fell in love with a guy. Because if she does that, it's not a sacrifice. And this goes to origin stories. And one of the things that we really wanted to hit this last year, which is it's easy to look at characters like Batman and Superman and see their sacrifice. Batman's obvious.
Batman is literally the most obvious hero with a sacrifice.
Yeah. Superman, arguably less so, but it's still there. But with Diana, over the years, I think we have lost that element of sacrifice. And because that element of sacrifice was paradise.
Which is hard to conceive of to begin with. Like, we can't wrap our head around that sacrifice.
And if she can go back home then whenever she wants.
Right, then it's just a compromise.
Then it's not a sacrifice. Yeah, it's a mild inconvenience. She needs to leave her home with the full belief that she will never see it again. And that means she will never see her mother again. She will never see her friends again. She will never see the people that she has been lovers with or to again. She will never eat that food, taste that wine. She will never hear that music. She will never sleep in those beds. All of it's gone. It's gone when she leaves. And she has to turn into that willingly and frankly without hesitation. That grants her, I think, a heroism that to a great many people,
that's something
I think,
that really
was
struck me from the rebirth issues, is that there isn't a whole lot of her pondering what to do. It really, at least the first issue to me, seems like she sees a situation and acts, and there's emotion about it, perhaps, there's reflection afterward, but there isn't a whole lot of like, being tormented and wondering what the right move is. Like, she kind of knows.
There's no Batman.
There's no Batman, yeah.
Her angst is in a different place. And I think if you want to grant her the sacrifice, then the sacrifice has to have teeth. And that means that there have to be nights, when she's sitting, awake in her apartment or whatnot, watching the snowfall, and going, I really miss home. I wish I could call my mom.
And I feel like to a lot of people, that sacrifice feels much more personal. And I know that's what makes me really relate to Wonder Woman a lot more than I would to Superman or to Batman or to The Flash. It's just that emotional connection and missing people in your life who are important to you and knowing you can't always go back to them.
Yeah, and paradise is so personal too. Like, you can walk away from your paradise and into a situation that might objectively seem better or from the outside seem better. But especially when paradise is defined by like relationships and your personal like memory and taste and the things that you like and your comforts. it's I don't know, everyone can do that at some point, can walk away, whereas not everybody can be ejected from like a home planet, you know, and crash here on Earth.
Well, and it goes to the universality, right? If on the one side, if the argument, part of the argument for saying, look, let's stop playing around, let's admit that the culture is a queer culture. If part of what you get out of that is the connection with Diana, that is the connection we've all had. We've all known what it's like to look at somebody longingly, you know. We've all run that emotional gamut. Then you get the converse, which is we all know what it's like to be alone. And we all know what it's like to say goodbye. And almost all of us, I would hazard, have had to say goodbye to somebody forever. Be it via death or into space and time. You know, that is universal to it. Like I say, my hackles tend to raise when I hear, and you hear it a lot with Superman too, these characters get dismissed because, quote, it's too easy for them, or they are, quote unquote, unrelatable. And if they're unrelatable, that's a failing in my writing. That's not a failing in the character. That's a failure in the storyteller, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, man, that was excellent. I don't really think I have any other questions for you. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I have never heard someone talk about that sort of mythology and just comic books in general as eloquently as you do, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
I would, just love to thank you again. I'm sure you get this all the time, but as a, queer lady who has always felt kind of alienated from comic books, Wonder Woman was my entrance to it. So thank you for, talking about the thing that we all know and love anyway.
Yeah, well, you are very welcome. One of the things that makes Diana so wonderful is that she's there for so many people. She is one of the most inclusive characters that I think has ever been created. She is there for everybody, and in particular, to people of all sexual identity. The number of trans people I know who see her as an anchor character. Mm-hmm. So it was, when it was funny when the interview came and I was asked. And the whole interview was about this. We knew this was going to be the question. Mm-hmm. And it is significant, I think, that DC said, and you are going to do this. They didn't say, no, you can't.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah, I mean, it is vital to understand that they were willing. And on one level, and in the main, I don't tend to have a lot of sympathy for this, but bearing in mind, you're talking about an aspect of a major character who is leading a feature film for a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and the corporation cares about one thing and one thing only, and it isn't
that money.
Yeah, they don't give a rat's ass about addressing social iniquity. If they can, they'll be happy to do it. They're not callow, mm-hmm. But the agenda is always first and foremost. The movie's got to do well. There's a lot of stuff built up in it, so that they were willing to drill down and do it. I will always applaud them for it, because there was a time when they wouldn't, and you can't. Marvel still won't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but as we've said, as you pointed out, it was simply saying what we knew. It wasn't headline news, except to people who wanted to make it headline news. To the rest of us, it was like, thank you.
Yeah, you read one fact about the writer's origins, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what's happening.
You just needed that one person to say it, and we really appreciate that you were the one who said it.
Yeah, and like that's what allies are for,
Well, and that's the crucial thing, because at the same time that I fully acknowledge that I did not say anything we didn't already know, mm-hmm. But the fact that we finally said it matters enormously. Yeah. The visibility matters. I know that too well. One wants to be able to see oneself in these stories.
Always true, and that's what we try to do with our mythology. We try to bring a little bit more of ourselves into stories that people told themselves.
Right, exactly. From whatever it is, a queer perspective, a feminist perspective, from just living in 2017, looking at these stories that matter a lot to people still. So thank you for giving your voice to our reading of this amazing mythological universe.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
Spirits was created by Julia Shafini and me, Amanda McLaughlin. It's edited by Eric Schneider with music by Kevin MacLeod and visual design by Allison Wakeman.
Subscribe to Spirits on your preferred podcast app to make sure you never miss an episode. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr at Spirits Podcast.
On our Patreon page, patreon.com/spiritspodcast, you can sign up for exclusive content like behind-the-scenes photos, audio extras, director's commentary, blooper reels, and beautiful recipe cards with custom drink and snack pairings.
If you like the show, please share with your friends and leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help.
Thank you so much for listening. Till next time.